Members, we have files that are eligible to take up, bills eligible to take up for concurrence. I realize some members have left the chamber. If you received a pass to leave the chamber, we need you to return. Other members who are here are waiting for you to come back so we can continue with our daily file. Members, we will begin with file item 24. There is concurrence on both sides. Ms. Evans, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1470 by Assemblymember Evans, an act relating to alcoholic beverages.
You may open, Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 1470 has support on both sides. This is the bill that allows consumers who are drinking a bottle of wine at a wine bar to brown bag their unfinished wine and take it home. It's a good bill. It's a good consumer protection bill. It encourages responsible consumption of alcohol. Senate amendments establish parity in how wineries may sell their wines at operations that are operating, at locations that are operating under duplicate licenses. I would ask for your aye vote or your aye vote in concurrence in Senate amendments.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This is a concur on both sides, members. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. Mr. Cotto, was that file item 16? Mr. Cotto is prepared to take up file item 16 for Assemblymember Price. Senator Price, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 246 by former Assemblymember Price, presented by Assemblymember Cotto, an act relating to horse racing and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Cotto, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill requires a person, by the way, this has support on both sides, requires a person's licensed to conduct horse racing to hold in trust the distributions required until such funds are paid to the various recipients. I request your concurrence in Senate amendments.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. There's a concur recommendation on both sides, members. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Concur recommendation on both sides. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Concur recommendation on both sides. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We'll go to file item 10 by Mr. Hernandez. He's prepared to take that up. Concurrence recommendation on both sides. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1584 by Assemblymember Hernandez, an act relating to public employees' retirement and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
You may open, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, concurrence in Senate amendments. Amendments taken in the Senate were clarifying and technical in nature. This measure received bipartisan support, requires all public pension systems to adopt a policy requiring disclosure of fees paid to investment placement agents. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. Concurrence recommendation on both sides. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 58, no 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We'll move to file item 11. Ms. Ma, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 129 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to taxation and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
There's concurrence recommendation on both sides. You may open, Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 129 conforms state and federal law by providing limited confidential communication between a federally authorized tax practitioner and their client or California taxpayer. The Senate amendments are only technical and resolve chaptering out issues. AB 129 passed out of both houses with only yes votes and has no opposition. Respectfully ask for your aye vote on the amendments. Thank you, members.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 57, no 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We go to file item 12 by Mr. De Leon. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 281 by Assemblymember De Leon and others, an act relating to agriculture and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
You may open, Mr. De Leon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 281 will create the Citrus Disease Prevention Management Committee to advise the Secretary on pest and disease issues specific to citrus in the state of California. Amendments have been taken in the Senate are technical and clarifying and adding an urgency clause, hence the need for 54 votes to get this bill off the floor. We're talking about a $1.5 billion industry here in the state of California. This is a bipartisan measure and has received no votes. The purpose of this bill is to protect the California citrus industry. Just to put things in context right now, the Wang Glongbling bug that has originated in India, gone to China, Brazil, Florida, Louisiana, and in this year alone in 2009, it was captured in San Diego, in Santa Ana. They captured this bug in Echo Park in my district, AD 45, so that's as far as north as gotten in the state of California. We have to do everything possible to eradicate this bug and protect our citrus industry in California. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Very quickly, I want to thank Mr. De Leon for carrying this bill. It's very important, and we really appreciate that and would appreciate everyone's support. Thank you very much.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. Mr. Gilmore.
It's your lone voice for the Valley. I want to thank the author of the bill. This would have devastating impact on the citrus industry in the Valley. I want to thank him for it. Ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Perez? Mr. De Leon, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for bipartisan support. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 60, no 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We're going to go back to file order now, members. File item. We're going to go to file item 7. Mr. Perez, are you prepared to take up file item 7? Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 9 by Assemblymember John A. Perez and others, an act relating to the Political Reform Act of 1974.
You may open, Mr. Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 9 provides clarification for determining whether communication by a local government or agency during an election for a candidate or initiative constitutes improper campaign material or activity. Senate amendments delete the provision of the language and add to the definition of independent expenditure a payment of public money by a state or local government agency. Additionally, amendments state that contributions further includes the payment of monies by a state or local government agency for communications to the public. This bill has received bipartisan support, and I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes, ayes 62, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We'll go to file item 8 by Mr. Portantino. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 221 by Assemblymember Portantino and others, an act relating to public health and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
You may open, Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 221 exempts HIV counselors who work under a physician and surgeon and who undergo additional training from the limited phlebotomy certification. The Senate amendments add an urgency, delete an out-of-date HIV rapid test pilot program, and add curriculum requirements. This measure is sponsored by AIDS Healthcare Foundation and San Francisco AIDS Foundation and supported by numerous health organizations and local agencies. I respectfully ask for concurrence on the Senate amendments.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes, ayes 61, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We move to file item 9 by Ms. Caballero. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 856 by Assemblymember Caballero and others, an act relating to fertilizer and make an appropriation therefore.
You may open, Ms. Caballero.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 856 ensures the integrity of our organic produce industry and protects farmers and consumers from adulterated product. The Senate amendments require all bulk organic fertilizers to be registered, reviewed, and properly labeled, call for an increase in the registration fees, which is supported by the industry, and provides for the establishment of civil penalties for violation and increases in penalty provisions. I respectfully ask for your aye vote on concurrence.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes, ayes 57, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We go to Ms. Huber, file item 13. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 579 by Assemblymember Huber, an act relating to state boards and commissions and make an appropriation therefore.
You may open, Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 579 requires the state auditor to audit at least 2 state boards and commissions every year. It's only appropriate in these times that we actually know the workload of people on the state boards and commissions if we're going to set the salaries here in the legislature for that. So I urge your aye vote on concurrence.
Seeing no discussion, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes, ayes 55, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We'll go to Mr. Cook, file item 14. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 563 by Assemblymember Cook, an act relating to taxation and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Cook, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. AB 563 provides technical fixes to last year's AB 3016, which expanded the California Military Family Relief Act. This basically expands the benefits to all the services, not just the National Guard. There were some fixes that were needed. This has had no votes, and I ask for your concurrence in this vote, please.
Seeing no discussion, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes, ayes 62, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. File item What was the 67-0 on the urgency, 67-0 on the bill. The bill passes. All right. File item 15 is passed temporarily. File item 16 has been dispensed with. File item 17 has gone to the inactive file. That takes us to file item 18. Ms. Brownlee.
She went past temporarily.
Passed temporarily.
So we go to 19. Yes,
file item 19 by Ms. Salas. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1571 by the Assembly Committee on Veterans Affairs, an act relating to mental health.
Ms. Salas, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 1571 is back for concurrence after passing the Senate with a unanimous vote. The bill was amended to delete the study and to eliminate any cost pressures on the California Department of Veterans Affairs. And the bill passed off this floor in June with only 2 no votes. I respectfully ask for your vote on concurrence.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 50, ayes 62, noes 0. The bill passes. Takes us to Mr. Monning, file item 20. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 240 by Assemblymember Monning, an act relating to conveyances.
You may open, Mr. Monning.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the Senate amendments clarify the process whereby state-owned and state-leased property at De La Viega Park would be transferred to the City of Santa Cruz. This process has been in the works since former State Senator Bruce McPherson first introduced this legislation allowing for the conveyance of property in 1999. This received 40 votes in the Senate, 78 when it was here in the Assembly. I ask for your aye votes on the Senate amendments in concurrence. Thank you.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 65, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. Takes us to file item 2021. Mr. Fuhrer, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 941 by the Assembly Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to adoption.
You may open, Mr. Fuhrer.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This is a bill to make it easier for California families to adopt kids. The Senate amendments are very technical in nature. The bill has no opposition and has passed through houses without any no votes. I urge your support on concurrence.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 66, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. We'll move to Mr. Torlakson, file item 22. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1015 by Assemblymember Torlakson and others, an act relating to nitrous oxide.
Mr. Torlakson, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this does deal with nitrous oxide, making it illegal to sell to youth under age 18. The Senate amendments made the misdemeanor up to 6 months instead of up to a year. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 65, noes 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. Takes us to file item 23. Ms. Conway, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1438 by Assemblymember Conway, an act relating to drinking water.
You may open, Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Amendments to AB 1438 set the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund cap at $3 million and provides the Department of Public Health with the ability to raise the cap to $10 million in individual hardship cases that meet specific criteria. Also, planning and construction grants would be authorized for each participating public water system share of the cost of protection. This is for disadvantaged communities. It also establishes wellhead protection and fire flow demand. This bill has had no opposition, and I respectfully request your concurrence with the Senate amendments.
Seeing no discussion, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. Senate amendments have concurrence. File item 24 has been dispensed with. File item 25 is passed temporarily. File item 26 by Mr. Cook. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 307 by Assemblymember Cook and others, an act relating to sex offenders and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
You may open, Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill is one which has gone through various committees. It has just come back from Public Safety, where it passed unanimously. That was held yesterday. It passed off the floor of the Senate without a single no vote. And the bill itself, as I said, is one where this is a very, very controversial arena. But I just wanted to pay special kudos to Senator Leno and Senator Benoit for working through this so that we could amend or change the penal code in regards to registered sex offenders and the environment that they could work for. And basically, this bill clarifies that arena, and this bipartisan effort enabled us to get this far. And I ask for your concurrence on a bill that has taken a long time to get here, and this is the result of working together. Thank you.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 69, no 0 on the urgency. Ayes 69, no 0 on the bill. Senate amendments have concurrence. We now go to file item 27 by Ms. Ma. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1087 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to taxation.
You may open, Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, Senate amendments to AB 1087 add a clarification in current law which prohibits a company that is located in a tax haven country from eligibility to compete for a contract with the state of California. During difficult budget times, more competition among qualified bidders for state contracts can lead to cost savings for essential services. This bill is sponsored by the California Retailers Association and has no opposition. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in opposition to this measure because an unrelated measure that was essentially orphaned when the bill failed in the Senate was added to this. As we are often seeing in the last waning days of the session, what ends up happening is things that would normally never be allowed to happen kind of get quickly rushed through without a lot of comment. And because of this, I'm concerned that we just slow down a bit and follow the rules, and not approve measures that have been amended in ways that are not typically done in this House. So for those reasons, I would urge a no vote on this measure.
Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Ma, you may close.
Thank you very much. And to my colleague, the portion of the bill he is referring to was heard by the Senate in 2 committees earlier this summer. We feel that this is important for the state of California to keep businesses and jobs here and to make sure that our contracts are competitive. Thank you, members. Respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 47, noes 18. Senate amendments have concurrence. We move to file item 28 by Mr. Portantino. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 224 by Assemblymember Portantino, an act relating to business and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
You may open, Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 224 is a simple bill that will extend the sunset on a key provision of the California law that provides conformity with the recently modernized Uniform Commercial Code as it pertains to intellectual property. With the current law scheduled to expire on January 1st, 2010, this bill seeks to preserve current practices for another 3 years by moving the sunset back to 2013. This bill has no opposition and was approved by the Senate Judiciary Committee unanimously, and I believe the Assembly as well, and moved off the Senate floor on consent, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 65, no 0 on the urgency. Aye 65, no 0 on the bill. On the concurrence, Senate amendments have concurrence. File item 29 is passed temporarily. We'll move to file item 30. Ms. Hayashi, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 120 by Assemblymember Hayashi and others, an act relating to healing arts.
Ms. Hayashi, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I respectfully request your concurrence in Senate amendments for AB 120. AB 120 makes several changes to the medical peer review process. Senate amendments are technical and clarifying changes. I respectfully ask for aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. Oh, one moment. Mr. Perez.
Question of the author.
Without objection.
And I'm sorry, I just noticed this in the bill, so I just have a technical question. This bill is double joined 820?
Correct.
And what does that bill do? I'm sorry that I'm asking at this late date.
I don't have the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 65, no 0. Senate amendments are concurred in. Members, if I could direct your attention to the rear of chambers, please. Mr. Davis would like to do an introduction from the Speaker's desk for some special guests.
Thank you very much, Speaker and members. Today was a day where we acknowledge the unfortunate situation of 9/11 and the unfortunate families who experienced challenges, an incident that brought all of us together, but also an experience that made us really realize the importance of public safety. Today, I would briefly like to also acknowledge a young man or a officer who has a lot of experience, quite actually, who has been a part of the security team here in the state capitol, who is leaving his assignment today. And we also want to acknowledge what he has done for many of those of us who drive our state cars into the Capitol, ensuring that, in fact, our cars don't have things like bombs under them, like many of us might fear based upon the things that we do every day. But it is good to know and to appreciate the work of the law enforcement officers, specifically here in the Capitol, who take care of those of us who are representing Californians. And today, I want to acknowledge Officer Lloyd Michael Brown. Many of you know that he has been here loyally helping to provide security for us, and he is moving on. He has had 20 years of experience in law enforcement, 14 of which have been for the California Highway Patrol. And so we appreciate him on this very special day that we talk about 9/11, but more importantly, that we recognize the importance of security, and let us do so right here in our own body of the state capitol. Thank you. Also, I want you to know that Captain Bob Gillian, Sergeant Steve Stone, Officer Gerard Lacilia are also here from the California Highway Patrol.
Members, we're going to move now to the second reading file. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 131, 819, 188, 14, 84, and Senate Bill 85.
All bills will be deemed read, amendments deemed adopted. Mr. Torrico.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Continued on motions and resolutions, I request unanimous consent to allow the authors or floor managers to take up the following bills today without reference to file for the purpose of third reading. File item number 1, SB 131. File item 2, SB 819. File item 3, SB 188. File item 4, SB 14. File item 5, SB 84. And file item 6, SB 85.
Without objection. So, members, we now have more bills eligible to take up today. We have waived the one-day file notice, so file items 1 through 6 are now eligible to be presented. If you have one of those bills that you're presenting, these are Senate bills, please be prepared to take them up. Members, we're going to move ahead in the file. We're going to take up a reconsideration item. This is file item 45. You have information at your desk regarding this bill. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 545 by Senator Cedillo, an act relating to transportation.
You may open, Mr. Eng.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is a bill that's up for reconsideration. I believe that we've had quite a lot of spirited and informative discussion. I just want to make a few small points. First of all, the bill is not premature. In fact, currently there is a feasibility study to determine how to get us from point A to point B. Members, this has been a bill that reflects 40 studies in 40 years. A feasibility study will be aided by knowing that the only way to close this gap is through an underground route.
Mr. Eng, I apologize for having to interrupt you. However, the first order of business is to ask for reconsideration and then to present on the bill once reconsideration is granted. So we need to have a motion to grant reconsideration. One moment, please. So, members, what I need to ask is if we can have, by unanimous consent, reconsideration granted. And Mr. Hagman is withholding unanimous consent. So we will do a roll call to grant reconsideration. It requires 41 votes to grant reconsideration. That is the first motion that is in order. I apologize, Mr. Eng, for missing that step. So the first roll call will be for reconsideration. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This is not on the bill in chief, members. This is on granting reconsideration. Requires 41 votes. Mr. Torrico is asking for an aye vote. Mr. Hagman is asking for a no vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 45, noes 2. Reconsideration is granted. Now the clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 545 by Senator Cedillo, an act relating to transportation.
Now, Mr. Eng, you may continue with your open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Listen, let me just quickly and politely and respectfully refresh your memory. I know a lot has happened since this bill was brought up about 30 seconds ago. But if you could imagine a freeway in which the goods movement of the United States of America comes up through the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles like a giant water hose, and imagine that stream gets distributed all over the place, but it gets pinched at the very end in my district, in our districts, and that's the 710 freeway, a waters for drinking freeways or for fighting kind of a situation. But imagine, if you will, finally after 40 years, the one city that had opposed this through lawsuits and demonstrations and town halls, as well they should have, because this is a democracy. Imagine that city is finally saying, listen, we see a solution, and that's this bill. It's a simple bill. It simply says that if and when a freeway is completed, and if it goes through this city, it cannot go above ground. And that's all this bill does. This bill is not premature. As I said, there's been 40 studies in 40 years. A current study, another feasibility study, will actually be aided by this bill. This bill is not premature. This bill aids any study, because any study of connecting the gap, as you see by that map, will need to say that the solution cannot be a surface route. So it aids the study. It assists the understanding. It saves money by not wasting precious time and research on a above-ground route. My second point is that it's been said that this is a district bill in one member's district. Let me just say that this is a regional bill. This is a bill that affects transportation in an entire area. It affects Mr. Fortani in Long Beach, Mr. De Leon in Los Angeles, Mr. Hernandez's district in the San Gabriel Valley, Mr. Calderon's area from East LA onward. This is a bill about economic development and jobs. Measure R, a county measure, $800 million for this project alone. This bill is about creating thousands of jobs at a time when our economy needs it. It's about traffic. The completion of this study will reduce vehicle miles by over 232,000 miles a day, saving 35,000 gallons of fossil fuel a day. It's about air quality. It will reduce pollution by over 1.1 tons a day. It's about saving lives, preventing over 610 accidents a year that happened because these trucks can't find their way when it dead ends into my district. It's about coalition building. It's about approval. It's about cities coming together and saying, we want to find a solution. Finally, it's about being able to take advantage of a small window of triple P, public-private partnerships, that will terminate in the year 2017. We've got to get this gap finished. We've spent far too long debating it.
1 minute,
The
Mr.
time
Lang.
is now. And again, members, all we're saying is to allow us to complete this gap by doing one simple thing today. It's not about funding. It's not about studies. It's about one city saying that if and when you complete this freeway, it's got to be underground. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Let me start by saying I'm sorry for everyone who's been put in the middle of this issue. I really feel horrible that you've all had to be lobbied and talked to for the last 2 days with many, many lobbyists, many, many conversations with colleagues. This is truly a district issue that should not be before the legislature, and I apologize that it's here. But now that it's here, let's be clear. There is a $13 million taxpayer-funded study that is looking at 5 underground routes, potential routes, and the feasibility of this project. It is an abomination of good government for the legislature to wade in on this project before that comprehensive evaluation plays its course. And precisely what was just said, we don't need to study it anymore. That's precisely what this bill is going to be used for. It is going to be used to go back into the district and say, the legislature has waded in on a tunnel that has yet to be feasible, and they are going to move it forward based on this action. And let me tell you, members and friends and colleagues, this project is of historic proportions. It will drain every transportation dollar from this state for decades. We are talking about a massive 8-lane tunnel 300 feet below the ground that may be 4.5 miles and may be 11.5 miles. It is going to be double-digit billions. And the proponents want to move it forward in spite of the Federal Highway Administration decertifying the environmental impact report, the record of decision, and the route. If we vote today to support this bill, we are voting to say that a tunnel should be where it's not even recognized by the federal government. This legislature will vote for a project that does not even exist. It was also warranted last week or the other day that the City of Pasadena supports this bill. The City of Pasadena has not taken a formal position on this bill. Let's be clear about that. Earlier in the year, there were other legislation on this matter, and it was told it was premature because there's a study going. Now we're being told it's not premature.
2 minutes, Mr. Portantino.
Let's be consistent. No project should have a price be good government. No project should move forward before it's ripe. And the reason why this project has taken 40 years is because time and time again, the process is being circumvented. And here's one more attempt. And let me also add, the federal government said, reevaluate this project, do surface improvements, complete the light rail, modernize the infrastructure, and see if it's needed. The proponents said no. An offer was put on the table a decade ago to extend the Freeway 1 exit to mitigate the local traffic problems. The proponents said no. We have self-perpetuated a problem because it's an all-or-nothing strategy, and now we're going to use the legislature. We're going to use the legislature to wade into a local problem. And if this project moves forward and there's no transportation dollars to do projects in your district next year or a decade from now, it's because this multi-billion-dollar project has the gerrymandered system and is moving forward. I respectfully, and again, I apologize putting you all in the middle of this. I respectfully ask
30
that you vote
seconds.
no or you lay off this directly local issue where there's no place for the state legislature to wade in on this project until after that study is complete. I respectfully ask for a no vote.
Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, members, I rise in support of this bill. Our starting point is one of the closing statements by Mr. Portantino, that this project has been ongoing for 40 years. Think about that. For 40 years. Even under the normal process, the normal CEQA process, and in the regular course of events, one would have expected that a freeway would have been approved in less than 40 years. The fact that it's taken 40 years means that there's tinkering going on. And I have seen that firsthand, having represented that area in the legislature and the assembly the first time I was up here, and representing cities now that are directly impacted. Think about it. Many of the freeways, if not all of them, along the 710 route have had to endure the existence of that freeway in the name of progress, in the name of a transportation system that is viable and that's functional. But it ends right there at Alhambra. Along that corridor, the 710, there is a higher incidence of cancer. There is a higher incidence of air pollution. There are 610 accidents a year, 37,000 gallons of more fossil fuel that are expended as a result of having to take alternative routes. Now, let's look at what's potentially being proposed here. It is not, for years and years, the city of South Pasadena said, nope, not in our community. It's our homes, notwithstanding everybody else's homes been taken because of the 710. But not our homes, not our communities, don't do this. This is the first time that there has been a solution to go underneath the city. Now, make no mistake, the technology is there. I was in Spain, and I traveled through one of these underground highways that I think over a distance of 2 or 3 miles. The technology is there. There are people that can build this. And it seems to me that it's the least impact on a community, and it's a good solution for something that's been lingering for 40 years. Every city along the corridor supports the continuation. The Metropolitan Transportation Association, SCAG, I mean, you name it. Even the city of Glendale, apparently, which is sort of in the northern part of where this freeway will end, supports this. This has been held up very, very effectively by very effective advocates such as Mr. Portantino, and he's done a great job, by the city of South Pass for the most part. I have seen where the freeway is ready to go forward and a new governor's elected and he gets convinced to do a new study. This happened with Pete Wilson when I was there, and for 8 years nothing happened. So
1 minute, Mr. Calderon.
I think that this is a logical solution to go underground, keep the pollution down, because you can recirculate it through filters and filter out clean air. And at least try and accommodate the concerns of both communities in terms of the responsibilities that we have to endure the progress and transportation system. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support of this measure. I originally wasn't going to get up and speak, and, we as members have every right to oppose another member's position. But with due respect, I need to disagree with my good friend and colleague from La Cañada with regard to his comments that this is only a district issue. It is not a district issue. This affects the entire region where I am in Southern California. It affects goods transportation all the way to Long Beach. It affects the 10 freeway and the backup all the way into my district. It affects Chuck's district. It affects most of the region. What we're asking here, or what this bill is asking for, is in the event that there is going to be a completion of this freeway, that it goes underground. And yes, it's true, it is going to bring a lot of jobs and it will reduce the amount of traffic as well as the air quality, what Assemblymember Mike Ings said. So I am rising in support of the issue, and I ask that you do the same.
Mr. De Leon. Mr. De Leon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This sounds a little like the Hatfields and McCoys, and I'm very, very respectful of my colleague and his passion with regards to this issue. I represent part of this district, and I represent a low-income, poor neighborhood, which is City Terrace. And I represent an area that disproportionately receives the majority of the particulate matter 2.5, the soot that gets lodged in one's lungs, and once it's there, you can never get it out. I represent that part of the district. So my district and my constituents have disproportionately had to suffer the severe consequences of CO2 emissions, NOx and SOx, because the freeway stops there. And I also know the devastating consequences of what a surface freeway does to a community. How the 10 freeway ripped apart an African-American neighborhood, in a Latino neighborhood, how where I grew up in San Diego, near Tijuana, the 5 freeway tore apart Logan Heights. It always historically happens in low-income neighborhoods. And I'm very respectful that we don't want a surface freeway going through South Pasadena as well as Pasadena. But with regards to the financial resources, I know with AB 2321 by Mr. Mike Fjord that was put on the ballot for the voters of Los Angeles County, Measure R, we have some resources earmarked. We have some resources earmarked through Measure R that we all collectively voted on the urgency 54 votes. And the voters of Los Angeles voted for that measure, Measure R, last year, and we have earmarked dollars for the completion of the 710 freeway. Now, this is a very difficult situation without a doubt. And I will say to Mr. Portantino, my colleague, that I will join with him that if this tunnel ever comes to fruition, I will join with him to make sure that that portal, the entrance to the portal, that tunnel goes south of Valley Boulevard. So not one single home, and I want to go on the record, so not one single home, either in Mr. Portantino's district as well as my district, as well as Mr. Ing's district, Mr. Calderon's district, is destroyed and moved because of this potential tunnel. But the reality is it's been 40 years now, close to half a century now, that we're trying to deal with this situation. I commend Mr. Mike Ing for his due diligence.
2 minutes, Mr. De Leon.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also commend Senator Gil Cedillo and the others. But the reality is such is that it is a very difficult situation at the local level. But my constituents have endured disproportionately the severe consequences of poor air quality. And for those who live at the higher levels in La Cañada Flint Ridge, they've had that luxury to live in that area geographically where they don't have to suffer the quality of air, all the congestion, and the traffic, and what happens in the local community. So I join in my colleagues, and I don't know what the outcome would be of this vote, but I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. De Leon. Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I rise in support of this measure, and I'll tell you why. My brother was a resident of that area, and he passed away in June. And despite 40 years of arguing about how to address this problem, he is now no longer with us to be able to see any solutions. So part of my original yes vote was based in his memory. But I think what we want to do here is look at this issue as more than a district issue, as my colleague, Mr. De Leon, just said. It is more of a regional issue for goods movement and for health and for transportation, lessening congestion and other impacts. But I would just say this, with all due respect to Mr. Portantino. Where is he now? I don't see him. Oh, there you are. You have argued passionately your views, but what I would ask colleagues is that you just simply give this piece a chance. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Tirico.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just wanted to respond to one of our colleagues who apologized for all the lobbying that took place. I got to admit, maybe I wasn't available. I wasn't lobbied actually by anyone outside of these chambers. In fact, most lobbying took place was by a member against the bill here. So I'm confused by the apology, number one. Number two, thank you. Number two, this, we can get into parochial interest here, but I think something that's happened that we shouldn't lose sight of, particularly this week, is we're trying to do things here that transcend our own districts and that transcend simple parochial interests. That's what we're trying to do with water. I think that's what we did yesterday when we took up the stadium, potential stadium in Los Angeles. It's certainly what I was trying to do when we took up the 49ers stadium deal a few weeks ago, and renewable energy and all the rest of the things we're trying to do. All of these things transcend and should transcend parochial interests. That's why I'm supporting the measure before us today.
Seeing no further debate. Oh, Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I'm also riding in support of this project. I actually taught for 10 years down where this freeway ends, and the congestion and the pollutants from that are near the school where I taught at were incredible. And then the teacher that would drive from Pasadena into the school where I taught at had to take surface streets, or they had to drive all the way into downtown LA and then drive back out. It just created more pollution on our freeways, and the streets are you could see the wear and tear. The community where the folks drive up and down this to get to work are very frustrated to see the traffic jams that occur because people don't want to be inconvenienced by a freeway. Again, this serves the greater good of our communities, and again, the people that work geographically throughout LA depend on freeways, and this obstruction of not being able to connect these two freeways really has become a serious factor in Southern California. So with that, members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further debate, Mr. Ring, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I am humbled. I'm moved by the eloquence of those that have spoken, all of you who have spoken. But I think nothing speaks louder than the will to complete something that's unfinished. Let me just leave you with a very visual idea of what's happening right now. Supposing that the 5 freeway to the airport was shut right down at J Street, and none of us could get to the airport. We had to go all around. And imagine that existed for 40 years. But imagine that all of a sudden the people that objected to the freeway continuing between J Street and the off-ramp to the Sacramento airport suddenly said, we're okay as long as you go underground, we're okay. And imagine that you could now get to the airport on time. I think that's all we're seeing here. It's a very simple bill. All it says is that one city, which is finally saying after all these years, no matter what you do, you can go through this city, but you got to go underground. That's all it is. It means jobs, air quality, saving lives, but most of all, bring peace to this region. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Thank you. Clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 All those vote who decide to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Mr. Ng moves a call. Members, we're now going to go to Assembly third reading, file item 52. Mr. Tirico, clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent resolution 95 by Assemblymember Tirico relative to California Native American Day.
Mr. Tirico, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This resolution would declare September 25th, 2009 as California Native American Day. As many of you, I'm sure, know, there are more than 100 recognized tribes in the state of California, many more than any other state in the nation. California's tribes are committed to contributing to the educational enrichment provided by the state and believe in providing new and improved educational resources about the varied cultures and histories of governance models used by California's Native Americans. This measure would recognize the importance of Native American Day and the concurrent California Indian Cultural Awareness Conference, which is sponsored each year by the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians, concurrently with the California State University at San Bernardino. It's a 5-day conference leading up to the holiday that has been a tremendous success in celebrating its 10th year anniversary. From the Kumeyaay Indians in San Diego to the Serrano in San Bernardino to the Yurok in the Klamath Basin, the indigenous people of California each have a diverse and peaceful existence that's lasted for many thousands of years. Today is our chance to salute the original Californians by declaring September 25th, 2009 as California Native American Day. Respectfully ask for a vote and ask for the first roll to be open for co-authors, Madam Speaker.
Seeing no debate, clerk will open the roll. Oh, co-authors, I'm sorry. The first roll is open for co-authors. Yes. Oh. There are 61 co-authors on the bill. I'll take a voice vote on the resolution. All those in favor, aye. All those opposed, no. The resolution is adopted. Members, we're now going to go to concurrence, file item 18. Ms. Brownlee, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1182 by Assemblymember Brownlee, an act relating to public post-secondary education.
Ms. Brownlee, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 1821 is a bill that streamlines the higher education reporting process by eliminating irrelative and duplicative reports and put into statute key reports that the legislature needs in decision-making processes. The amendments taken in the Senate were to address the Department of Finance concerns and to make sure the bill reflected changes made to the reporting requirements due to changes in the recent budget. This bill has had bipartisan support in both the Assembly and Senate and has no votes. I ask for your aye.
Clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 59, noes 0. The amendments are concurred in. Mr. Tirico? Mr. Turlington, would you be ready for Senate second reading? SB 84, Steinberg by Turlington. Are you ready? Okay, pass temporarily. Members, we can move to second reading of file item number 6. That is Cogdill by Yamada. SB 85, clerk will read.
Senate Bill 85 by Senator Cogdill and others, an act relating to local government finance.
You may open, Ms. Yamada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm presenting SB 85 on behalf of Senator Cogdill. It is a measure that will provide modest property tax relief for some small rural counties, including one of mine, Yolo County. These property tax inequities are a result of some unforeseen consequences of Prop 13 and the subsequent Education Revenue Augmentation Fund paybacks that counties have to do. These small counties have actually lost money in this shift, and this measure simply provides relief to these smaller counties that can very ill afford amongst all of the counties that are struggling in the face of these hard economic times. I therefore respectfully ask for your aye vote. This is a WARF SB 85 Cogdill.
All right, clerk will open the roll. Seeing and hearing no debate, all those voters desire to vote. All those vote who 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 desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 51, no 0. Measure is adopted. Move to file item 3, SB 188 by Senator Knight will be taking this up. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 188 by Senator Runner, an act relating to temporary restraining orders.
I've already promoted you, sir. Mr. Knight, you may open.
Thank you, members. SB 188 allows private educational facilities to obtain a restraining order to protect an entire campus. Businesses already have this protection. The need for this bill came about when the director of a private technical institute in my district described a situation in which an expelled student returned to campus and assaulted another student. The director went to court to get a restraining order and was informed that he would need a separate restraining order for each person on that campus. SB 188 corrects this by allowing a private educational facility to request a single restraining order to protect the entire campus. Recent floor amendments corrected a technical problem that was discovered in the cross-reference for the penal code. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 61, no 0. Measure is adopted. We'll file item 5. Mr. Tirico, for what purpose?
If we could return to motion of resolutions, please.
Without objection.
At the request of the author, please move file item 86, SB 722. File item 86, SB 722 to the inactive file.
Without objection. Clerk will note. Move to file item 5, SB 84 by Senator Steinberg. Mr. Torlakson would take that up. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 84 by Senator Leno, an act relating to local government finance.
Mr. Torlakson.
You gotta stop making funny faces. You never know.
If I'm not mistaken, this is a Steinberg bill.
Yeah, I said Steinberg, and you're taking it up though, correct?
Correct.
Yes, you made.
It says Leno there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it says Leno.
Oh, yeah. This is Steinberg bill. File item 5, SB 84 Steinberg. All right. So this is a gut and amend. You may begin, Mr. Torlakson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this deals with QEIA, the Quality Education Improvement Act.
Yes.
This is an area of extreme concern across the state in terms of what happened in the budget process. In the adopted budget that we're working from, there was an effort to balance everything by taking $400 million of the QEIA funds and not paying them to the 500 schools that would normally receive them, and to reduce their revenue limits for those districts accordingly. However, that would put the districts out of balance. It would punish districts, in effect, that had relied in good faith on the state saying, we'll give you extra funding for this very important program to target increased improvement in the lowest performing schools of California, the highest poverty schools of California. So this bill would clarify that there's a temporary shift in funding for QIA schools, and the revenue limits for these districts will not be adjusted until the Superintendent of Public Construction has signed off on receipt of applicable federal and state funds, which were intended to be the backfill. So this bill just says we're guaranteeing what was intended in the budget, but we're guaranteeing in a more solid way that we will not be hurting these QIA districts. We would urge your aye vote for this measure to continue the investment which was in the bill. I was the author of the bill originally, and the idea was to have a 7-year continuous flow of dollars and not to punish districts by taking away other funds while they receive these special funds. Urge an aye vote.
Very well, Ms. Harkey.
A question of the maybe not author, but...
Without objection.
Thank you. I am reading that there's there is an application for federal Title I waiver funds to loosen up restrictions, and it's underway, that would eliminate the need for this.
There's SIG funds, which is one type of federal funds, school improvement grants. I did speak to Secretary Arne Duncan when he was out here, and to his staff. It looks like they haven't received the paperwork. There's a rush to get the application for a waiver to them. That would take care of part of the problem, but perhaps not all the problem. But we're still guaranteeing these districts not to reduce their revenue limits, not to have their budgets go into negative certification by their county superintendent of education. And we're awaiting, hopefully soon, a response from Washington, from Secretary Duncan and his department as to that waiver. And then there are other federal funds involved that we're going to monitor as they become available.
Okay, next question, though. Will this be adding to our general fund deficit?
If those funds did not materialize from the federal government, if the waiver was not granted, yes. At the same time, though, we had guaranteed the schools as part of the budget process that this swap of QIA funds and revenue limit and the federal backfill dollars would not end up in a net hit to those very districts that we were trying to help with that 7-year investment plan in the original legislation. So the answer to your question is yes. I believe that we're going to get that waiver from all the assurances I've received, and that will not be a hit to the budget in the end.
Okay, on my own time. I would love to support the lower income schools, and I'm very upset to be put in this box, but we are not kind of in the loop on a lot of these last minute changes, so it's very difficult to get all the data that I need. I have a school district where the funds are actually available there, and I can't get $700,000 from my Oceanside school district. A different topic, a different issue, but it seems that it's very optional as to who gets money back and who doesn't in this process. And I know I'm not going to increase the general funds for what I was asking for, but I could not get any adjustment in the budget for mine. So just because of the party affiliation, I'm sure, you know, I'm a minority party member, and so my school district didn't get any help. So, you know, I appreciate the effort, and I know that the kids will benefit in this. I'm just a little bit concerned with the process and with the obvious, you know, if you're for children, you ought to be for children, and especially if the money's sitting around, I ought to be able to access it just like anyone else. So thank you, and I wish you luck.
Ms. Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to rise in strong support of SB 84 and thank the President Pro Tem for bringing this bill forward. We made an implicit commitment when we passed the budget in July to backfill specific cuts that were being made to districts and schools participating in the Quality Education Investment Act. This bill follows through on that commitment, and that it relieves those districts of cuts that would constitute an unfair burden in the event that backfill funds are not identified, and at the same time puts pressure on the Superintendent of Public Instruction and the Director of Finance to identify these funds to these school districts. This is an important measure. It represents and underscores what we have committed to these districts, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Mr. DeLeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just really quickly, I think this is a great opportunity for this legislature. This is us proving that we're quick and nimble with regards to the QIA dollars. The QIA dollars come directly from a bill that then Senator Tom Torlakson had when he was a senator by way of a lawsuit between teachers, California teachers, against the governor. A settlement was made. We decided to do the Quality Investment Education Act with lower decile schools, lower deciles 1 and 2, which are the most poverty-stricken, poor schools in the state of California, which again is a euphemism for black and brown schools throughout the state of California. But this shows that this legislature, both the Senate through Senate Pro Tem Steinberg and through Mr. Tom Torlakson, we're being quick and we're being nimble to try to deal with this issue, provide flexibility for the school districts. So I want to thank Mr. Torlakson as well as Mr. Steinberg for their leadership on this issue.
Mr. Perez?
Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues. I also rise and urge your support on SB 84, a bill that will help to ensure predictable funding for some of our most vulnerable schools. This bill directly affects children and the quality of their education. Without SB 84, schools throughout the state will face significant losses in general purpose dollars. These are dollars used for teachers and for in-classroom spending. What does this funding loss mean, for example, for my district? 5 school districts in Imperial County will lose roughly $2.1 million in general purpose dollars. 3 school districts in Riverside County will lose about $10 million. The budget item that initiated this reduction to our schools included the proposal to replace it with the federal Title I funds. This is a good idea, but our schools cannot make staffing and programmatic decisions based on just the promise. We need this funding. We need your support. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no more debate, Mr. Torlakson, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank members for their good dialogue on this and say that the comments by Assemblymember Perez and De Leon help in understanding the bill. Just to underscore and to respond to the good concerns of Diane Harkey, our Assemblymember Diane Harkey, about this is living up to a deal. There was a lawsuit because there was an illegal shift to Prop 98 money, $3 billion. The Superintendent of Public Instruction, Jack O'Connell, teacher groups like the CTA sued and won, and this was the settlement. If this commitment were not fulfilled, we would be back in court. I am sure we would be sued, and we would eventually have to pay those dollars back. There was a commitment made several years ago then when the bill was passed to have a 7-year investment in the lower 2 decile schools of California. 500 of them were chosen at that time several years ago, and this just lives up to our deal with those schools. There's no money that could be redistributed this time because it was started on this journey several years ago. I visited the Kuya schools, and they're using the money very well. It's a great investment. It's working. There's greater learning going on because of smaller class sizes and more counselors and more resources to those schools. So I urge you an aye vote to keep with our commitment as this legislature to those schools of California that need it the most.
Clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote.
Oh,
I did.
I can't vote.
All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 46, noes 15. Measure passes. Members, we're going to take a recess now for 1 hour, and there will be a meeting of the Latino Caucus in the Senate Majority Lounge. Latino Caucus in the Senate Majority Lounge. We will recess for 1 hour. We will reconvene at 4 p.m. Ken Maddy Lounge, also known as the Senate Majority Lounge.